Welcome to the absolute edge of human limits. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating explainer on the intersection of peak athletic execution and a highly stigmatized, often hidden subculture. We're going to look at the cutting edge of sports science and uncover what actually happens when athletes push way beyond standard physical boundaries.
All right, so have you ever heard the legendary and honestly kind of mythical story of Major League Baseball pitcher Doc Ellis? The story goes that he threw a no-hitter back in 1970 while allegedly high on LSD. It's a wild story, right? But whether it's entirely true or not, it perfectly sets the stage for a hidden reality and a growing problem in modern sports.
Now, when we think about peak athletic performance, what usually pops into your head? We probably picture relentless physical conditioning, strict diets, and traditional mental skills training, like deep breathing and visualization. But the reality of elite sports can actually be much darker. These athletes are constantly pushing their limits, and as a result, they often suffer from severe burnout, repetitive injuries, and just crushing performance anxiety. Because of this pressure, some athletes are quietly turning away from the traditional playbook and embracing an underground approach using mind-altering substances to cope with the immense strain.
Okay, let's get into the first part of our explainer. The agitation, whispers versus clinical science.
See, we know this underground subculture exists out there in the shadows right now. In fact, insiders have said you couldn't even calculate the number of people tripping when it snows in the Rockies. It's wild. But here's the massive issue. Almost all the clinical research on psychedelics so far has been focused heavily on treating mental disorders, like depression and anxiety, in highly controlled clinical settings. And that leaves a conspicuous, glaring gap in the science when it comes to healthy athletes who are actively pushing their physical limits out in the real world.
Because these substances are illegal and taboo, athletes are experimenting in the dark, and let's be absolutely clear. Here, locker room whispers, they aren't science. Think about it. Dropping into a steep backcountry snowboard run or stepping into a martial arts ring with an altered perception of reality is incredibly dangerous. Relying on rumors instead of hard data can literally lead to disastrous, life-threatening injuries.
Which brings us to Section 2, the revelation, the Glasgow Caledonian study.
So to finally bridge this glaring scientific gap, researchers Kaho Kelvin Ng and Dr. Phil Delgarno from Glasgow Caledonian University did something unprecedented. They actually tracked down athletes across 20 different sports to gather real data. They looked at a vast scope, from classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin all the way to non-classical ones like cannabis and MDMA. And they tracked everything from tiny microdoses to full mind-altering trips. By mapping all of this out, the researchers identified 4 major themes.
All right, let's dive into Part 3, the light side, enhanced well-being and the flow state.
The first theme they uncovered is enhanced well-being. Athletes reported experiencing absolutely incredible physical and mental benefits. We're talking a massive mood boost, significantly reduced anxiety, and way deeper social connections with their teammates. But it wasn't just in their heads. They also reported tangible physical benefits, like faster muscle recovery, improved sleep, and much better pain management.
To really grasp the human element here, just listen to this quote from a martial artist in the study. They said, "Frequent brain damage puts me in a dark mental place, but psychedelics significantly ease that mental stress." That really hits home, doesn't it? It perfectly shows why some athletes, especially those dealing with severe, repetitive physical trauma, are turning to these substances for essential mental relief when traditional sports psychology just falls short.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever dreaded a totally grueling 3-hour cardio session? We've all been there. But imagine a mental hack that literally makes the mind-numbing tedium of extreme distance running feel like a fun game. Well, some athletes reported using a low dose of mushrooms as exactly that, a trail shortener that completely changed their perception of the exhausting effort.
And that brings us to the second theme they found, unlocking an effortless flow state. Now, flow state is essentially this hyper-awareness of the body, where time actually feels like it slows down. It allows an athlete to execute these smooth, highly complex movements without their mind constantly jumping in with self-doubt or overthinking. You are completely, flawlessly tuned in.
So what does this actually feel like in practice? Well, listen to this mountaineer's account. They said massive elevation gains simply felt like playing around in nature. Think about that for a second. A specific dose actually removed all the physical struggle and mental friction from this climber's highly demanding ascent, turning a punishing, grueling task into pure play.
But hold on, before you decide to experiment before your next heavy lift or big game, you absolutely must understand the dark side of this research. Because a chemically induced flow state, it comes with a total nightmare scenario, the very real risk of terrifying cognitive failure.
Which leads us to part 4, the dark side, cognitive impairment and set and setting.
So the third theme the researchers identified is cognitive impairment, and this is literally the exact opposite of that magical flow state. We're talking terrifying drops in performance. Athletes experienced a total loss of coordination, super cloudy thinking, severe balance issues, and these deeply disorienting time skips where they entirely lost track of reality.
A snowboarder in the study perfectly highlighted just how imminent this danger is. They reported, "The visuals were pretty, but my balance was completely shot, making getting off the ski lift an absolute nightmare." I mean, wow. A simple loss of balance can turn a totally routine action into a highly dangerous situation. Imagine attempting a high-speed trick in that state.
And this perfectly illustrates the fourth and final theme, the context of administration, which you might know as set and setting. The reality is, the effects of these substances are wildly unpredictable. If an athlete uses them when they're already happy and confident, it can result in multiplied euphoria. But if they take them when they are stressed, tired, or uncomfortable, it can rapidly trigger severe paranoia and panic attacks. It depends entirely on the dosage and exactly where your mental state is at that moment.
All right, let's wrap this up with part 5, the future of sports science.
Ultimately, as we've seen throughout this explainer, these substances are absolutely not some magic pill for athletic dominance. No way. They are a highly unpredictable variable. On one side of the coin, you've got profound states of physical recovery and effortless flow, but on the other, paralyzing cognitive impairment. Understanding this radical intersection of altered states and peak performance is going to be absolutely crucial for the future of athletic mental health, injury recovery, and team cohesion.
So I want to leave you with this final thought, and I really want you to consider the implications of the science we just covered. Do you think psychedelic research belongs in mainstream sports science, or is it simply too dangerous to explore? Let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.